Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call this meeting to order. Diana, can you have a roll call, please?
Yes, Your Worship. I can confirm the IT manager, Cecil Coxon, and myself, Deputy Clerk Diana Wilson, are in attendance in the council chamber. For those participating by video conference, please answer present when your name is called. Mayor Manel,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Giguère,
Present.
Councillor Woodner,
Present.
Councillor Moore,
Present.
Councillor Cerna,
Present.
Councillor Lewis,
Present.
Councillor Galinsky,
Present.
Chief Administrative Officer, Clerk Michelle Casavecchia Summers,
Present.
Director of Fire and Emergency Services, Brent Smith,
Present.
Director of Physical Services, Matt Sweetland,
Present.
Director of Development and Community Services, Jean DeMeo,
Present.
Director of Finance, Arun Mohili.
Present.
That's everyone.
Thank you. Any declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. Minutes from June 4th. Was there any errors or omissions? Can I have a mover and seconder for the minutes then, please?
So moved.
Moved by Serta, second by Moore. All in favor?
Councillor Woodner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Giguère,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes.
carried.
Thank you. Next, we go on to delegations. We have Todd McDonald and John Prono with the Aylmer Servicing to provide policing for the Malahide Township. John and Todd, are you there?
Yes, we are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, we'll let you have the floor then.
Thank you, and we'll be keeping our comments brief. I'll lead off, and I would invite my colleague, Mr. Pernod, to comment as he sees appropriate. We want to give you just a brief summary of the work that we've done. Of course, we were directed by Council and the CAO to examine the feasibility of the Aylmer Police offer as part of the service sharing component of the work plan for reviewing service delivery across the township. And we have done so, and of course you have our report on your agenda tonight. It seems to me that the high points of the work we've done are as follows: that the Aylmer Police Service offer, we've certainly verified, we believe that it delivers a higher service level than the OPP currently offers in the form of a dedicated 24/7 officer presence deployed into Malahide. Now, this doesn't mean that that officer will always be within the boundaries of the municipality as they do their work. If there are important calls that Aylmer Police feel resources need to be deployed to another jurisdiction, that will happen, as will the deployment of officers in Aylmer to Malahide, if that is required by an extraordinary call. But overall, it represents a higher level of service. The Aylmer offer also offers guaranteed pricing stability over the length of a 10-year contract. They're offering a frozen-in annual pricing increase of 3%. Our view is that that contributes to sustainable budgeting for a decade. And it's far from clear, based on our reading of the cost pressures coming up in the next decade, that the OPP would be able to track their costs at 3%. But that is an unknown, and we can't verify that. The process has been quite rigorous. Any technical details or operational details that we have asked for, we have received informed answers at every step during our due diligence review. So we have concluded certainly that APS have done their homework in putting this proposal together. The Aylmer price overall is very similar, within $50,000 per year, to the current OPP pricing for the OPP's difficult to define, but probably lower level of service. The East Elgin deployment right now for the OPP deploys 2 officers to cover both Malahide and Bayham. And so we don't have that guarantee of an allocated resource that's deployed into Malahide on a consistent basis. We've determined that if we wanted to do a strict apples to apples cost comparison by asking the OPP for a dedicated, special service level officer in Malahide, that would cost, we believe, an extra $600,000, at least an extra $600,000 over the course of the 10-year contract, in that range of $600,000 to $700,000. That's if that service level was even available, because the recent experience in Leamington that you may have read about, Leamington has decided to opt out of OPP policing because their requests for additional funding beyond the base OPP deployment was, the OPP were not able to offer that level of enhanced service. We also believe that Malahide would probably secure increased input into local priority setting for policing via the Aylmer Police solution. We had a hard look at life cycle sustainability at legacy costs, and there are some questions at the end of the 10-year contract about facility reinvestment costs. We've delved deeply into salary calculations and potential capital expenditures that would, some of these areas that are a little fuzzy would need to be confirmed during a serious negotiation to come. But we think those are solvable and scalable problems to consult or to consider. In our report, which you have on your agenda, we've also recommended, in order to promote Malahide's interests, guaranteed annual budget consultation as part of the APS model, and the production of a results-based performance report that documents the value for money that Malahide would receive as part of the shared service model. So there'd be some important accountability tools that we would recommend as part of the negotiation. Overall, I would just offer a final comment that a successful solution around police service sharing, if that is the will of council, within the context of the work we're doing, will presumably build momentum for other potential service sharing opportunities with other East Elgin partners, including the town of Aylmer. And our team is currently exploring a range of these additional service sharing opportunities with both Bayham and soon with Central Elgin staff as part of the work plan that we're executing. So that's a quick overview of the work that we did. My associate, Mr. Pernot, is here to answer any of the detailed questions. He sort of led the charge from our point, and we had an additional member of our team who was a former Midland police chief and was very skilled in the process of negotiating contracting of third-party policing costs. So when it's an appropriate point in your agenda, we are happy to answer any questions that you may have about our feasibility analysis.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Just for council, we will be dealing with this later on in the process. Right now, we're just getting questions and comments to either Todd or John as far as the proposal put before Malahide. Certainly, I'm impressed. I think there is potential for a better service as well as a very competitive cost. But I'll open up to council for any questions.
I can start.
Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, you keep talking about a higher level of service. Do we not already have one OPP dedicated to Malahide? And how would that change with Aylmer? Because Aylmer is going to dedicate one to Malahide.
So based on our work, Councillor Cerna, the answer to that is no. There is not a dedicated officer to Malahide currently the way that the OPP deploys. They deploy an East Elgin shift, and the movement and the deployment of those officers is fluid on a day-to-day basis. So there is no designated OPP resource that's deployed to Malahide.
Okay, so two would be between Malahide and Bayham then, correct? That's East Elgin?
I'll invite Mr. Pernot to comment.
They are assigned to Bayham and Malahide, but OPP will not guarantee that they will be in either of those communities at any time during the day. So they go where the calls are. It's a very fluid deployment system, and they're not dedicated to this specific municipality. The difference with the Elmer model is, for the most part, they will dedicate them to the to your municipality. As Todd mentioned a little earlier on, the only exception is if a major incident happens that needs additional resources, they would move to help in Elmer if needed, just like Elmer would move to help in Malahide if needed. So that's the only reason we say you can't be guaranteed that they're going to be sitting in Malahide every minute of every day, 365 days a year. And for the most part, it's a much more significant commitment to the service level.
Okay, if I can follow up with that, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
What about the services that Elmer doesn't provide that the OPP does, such as marine rescue, canine search, and things of that nature? Like, what would happen if we needed, we would have to, if we went to the Elmer policing model and we needed that, would we have to call OPP in anyways?
You might have to, but Elmer has agreements for all of those services. They have to. As a police service, you have to be able to provide everything from hostage negotiation to tactical teams. That doesn't mean you have to have that in your police service. It means you have to have an agreement with a neighboring police service to provide that. Some of the services are provided by St. Thomas, others are provided by OPP for Elmer. But when we ask the questions about those specific services, the agreements are all in place to provide those services.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Mark? Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, thank you. On page 31, under conclusions, it got alluding to the fact if there was a building or something needed to be addressed or replaced or repaired, we could be on the hook for that, for some of it.
Go ahead, John.
Well, not right now. Right now, they've committed that there's no, that all those costs are Elmer costs. They're not Malahide costs. You're not buying a piece of the Elmer Police Service. You're renting police officers from them. We bring the point up that after 10 years, there are going to be some capital expenditures that are there. We don't know if, and we're not, I won't say we're not so much concerned about the building. The building is going to be an issue that's going to have to be dealt with. But the things that we were talking about is in the budget preparation that Elmer did for us and for you, they only addressed capital replacement costs over the 10-year time frame of the contract. So if there was something that would have to be replaced after that time frame, you could be in the situation where you'd have to have another catch-up phase like you do in this contract. If you recall the way this contract is proposed, in the first year, there's a capital outlay to buy a cruiser for the Malahide officer and to buy weapons for the Malahide officer and all the equipment that they need. We expect weapons for as one item, they wear out after 10 years and will have to be replaced. And that cost is not built in here. There's not a component where you're putting money into a capital reserve for anything other than a vehicle right now, because vehicles are going to have to be replaced within that 10-year period. So they've built that into this budget. They haven't built anything further on down the line. But as to the building itself, we have to say that because of COVID, we weren't able to do an assessment of that building. So we haven't seen the police headquarters. We understand that there are some physical issues with that building, that it requires work. And right now, that's not part of the contract. It's clearly eliminated from your costing in the proposed budget. But we want to just make sure that it's quite clear that in the future, there might be a situation where that discussion comes up and you have to be prepared for it.
I guess I would just also offer the point that certainly unfunded capital life cycle liabilities 10 years out are not unique to the municipal sector. This is a challenge that the entire sector will be facing as it moves forward to do sustainable asset management. And I would expect that the town of Aylmer and its police service well, I know they will need to comply with the asset management regulations that the province has passed and put in place. So there will be information offered during the course of the 10-year contract that'll make it clear what the life cycle capital requirements of the Aylmer Police Service are going to be. And if they turn out to be onerous, a course correction, of course, for Malahide is possible at the end of the 10-year contract, of a hypothetical 10-year contract.
Basically, Mark, this is a fee for service for 10 years.
Okay, I do know when the OPP was pricing Elmer's, taking over Elmer, the building wasn't usable for them. Do you remember that, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in the wrong spot, everything was wrong with it, so I just want to make sure we're not gonna be caught, but it looks okay what you're saying. Thank you.
Any other questions for these gentlemen?
Mr. Mayor, it's
Just-
Dominique.
I got Chester and then you, Dominique. Jess, go ahead.
Mayor Manel, after the first year, will there be any savings on the total cost of the purchasing of the service?
Todd?
Yeah.
The contract is quite clear that there's a cost escalator that has been built into the service, a 3% annual cost escalator from the base budget. And so that is the ceiling, if you will. The financial risk exposure is 3%. Our experience I'll say my experience after doing 20 years of municipal management consulting is I've never found a municipality that could manage a 3% overall increase in its base budget for 10 years. So from a cost containment point of view, we think that is one of the primary value-added components of the Aylmer contract. We also note that there's an opportunity for salary and wage costs to potentially come in underneath that 3% escalator, depending on where in the salary range and the experience range the 5 officers for Malahide end up being retained at. And we're recommending that if there are cost savings from lower than anticipated maximum salaries, that those would be put in a reserve fund to protect any unanticipated costs for Malahide moving forward.
If I may follow up on that,
Go ahead, Jess.
have to purchase a car the first year for the officers to use. After the first year, we to purchase another car until it has to be replaced. So could there not be some kind of savings there? But it sounds like you're saying we're not going to experience that. We're going to experience a 3% increase. Is that correct?
They have, the way they worked their proposal, they realized that year one was going to be a more expensive year because of the capital outlays. So in year one, they kept the salaries at an artificially lower level because they didn't want you to have a really excessive year one. In year two, they balanced the salaries. You recall the 369 discussion that's gone on over the years with emergency services, where they get a 3% raise at a certain level, 8 years in. An 8-year officer gets a 3% raise, and then there's a 6% raise at 16 years, and it goes on and on and on. They tried to come up with a formula. The chief tried to come up with a formula of where he thought 5 officers would be in the sort of in the middle of that 369 category. He didn't build that in until year 2. So he's trying to keep year 1 and year 2 and beyond at about the same level. So you're comparing apples to sort of a slightly different apple in year 2 and beyond.
Capital spending is occupied by operating spending for salaries and wages when you get into year 2, and the costs overall remain stable.
Okay, Jess?
Thank you.
Okay, Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just Just a few quick clarifications. So when you mentioned that a potential upgrade to OPP services would cost 600,000, is that over the course of the 10 years? So so we're comparing potentially an increase of 50,000 versus 60,000.
Well, yes and no. That's a cost for one dedicated officer. So we don't know how the OPP would budget this, because in theory they could say, to get to that level of service that we're dedicating an officer there, we need to give you that coverage 24 hours a day. They might say it would require 3 officers, which would be 125,000 per officer per year. So it could be $375,000 per year. We don't know what the formula would be. We're basically saying the number that we've put there is the number to give you a dedicated officer, probably the equivalent of 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So it's not a dedicated officer 24/7. It's a dedicated officer for one shift. We did try to get confirmation on the numbers. We had very good cooperation from the inspector at Elgin OPP and the staff sergeant that's the acting commander right now, and they passed us on to an inspector in the municipal policing branch in Aurelia, and we're still waiting for an answer. It's been 2 weeks now, so we were very specific about asking for that number, and we haven't received that information. As Todd said, having seen the information coming out of Leamington recently, they're in the same boat. They asked for that information. How much would it cost? We've got $2 million. We want to add these other officers. How much is it going to cost? And they didn't get an answer either. So it may be something that OPP is just very hesitant to veer from their current, deployment plan.
And I was wondering, and I don't know if any of the documentation that you reviewed would allow you to answer this, but was there anything in the interviews or the documents that indicated that we need additional service, that the current level of service by the OPP based on our crime rate and the type of crime, or that it would be warranted, that it would be in the best interest of Malahide to consider additional service?
Oh, well,
I don't. Oh,
it seems to
sorry.
me there's 2 questions there.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the best interest of Malahide is a separate question than whether or not there is a deficiency in the current service level. So,
Fair
John,
enough.
why don't you answer the first question, and maybe I'll take a crack at the second one.
Well, I was just going to say that everybody we talked to, I don't think we heard from anybody that they were upset at the level of service that OPP provided. When you call for OPP, they're there. When you're, they're in the community whenever they can be in the community. So we didn't see that sort of issue being out there. But I think Todd's right. That's that next step, that
Right.
the visibility, regular visibility, the community programming, that I think is the benefit that you end up paying for out of this new option.
The service sharing option that Aylmer has put forward could deliver a marginal increase in quality that represents more improvement than the marginal increase in price, which, when you consider those together, is an improvement in value. And that's what continuous improvement is about, and that's what service sharing is about, is trying to optimize the value for money. So, I mean, it's, John, the Aylmer price is about $50,000 more expensive on an annual basis, but delivers a significantly higher level of value. So the question is a governance question, Deputy Mayor, about what value level council is willing to pay for. What's clear is, for the same value level that Aylmer is offering in their proposal, the OPP, to match it, would have to pay, would cost significantly more than they do now.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to find out also if the 3% that's planned, is it exclusive of any potential indexation or 2% inflation?
No.
Or is it just
It is the
flat no matter
indexation.
what?
That is the indexation.
That is the indexation.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be their annualized budget. which would, I mean, from a hedging point of view, that would have to include energy costs and fuel costs and any
Salaries.
fluctuations or changes in the purchase of apparatus or equipment. It's, as I said, in my 20 years of doing municipal management consulting, I have not had a client whose municipal budget was managed at 3% a year for 10 years in a row.
Thank you.
Any other questions for these gentlemen?
I have one.
Go ahead, Rick.
If their cost does go above the 3% threshold, say carbon tax or something like that, or something, are they gonna come back to us, or are we frozen at 3%? Somebody else has to make up the difference.
I would assume you would execute a legally binding contract with the Aylmer Police Service that stipulates very clearly, if you're competent negotiators, which I believe you are, that 3% would be an upset limit. Any other costs would have to be absorbed by the Aylmer Police Service. And if that had a property tax impact, it would be absorbed by the town of Aylmer.
Yeah, that sounds all right.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I'm intrigued. I think that there's a very good possibility we could have expansion of service at a very reasonable price. So we will be dealing with this later on with the CAO's report. But right now, we're just going to receive and file the report from both Todd and John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I need a mover and second. The presentation received from Todd McDonald and John Prono of Performance Concept Consulting regarding the feasibility of the Aylmer Police Servicing providing policing for Malahide Township be received.
Move it.
Moved by Whitner. Seconder.
Aye.
Second by Serna. All in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes.
carried.
Thank you. And just in closing, I want to emphasize that we have had an excellent performance from the OPP over the last number of years and have a great working relationship with them. So this has nothing to do with a poor performance by the OPP. There's just an opportunity to have a better service at potentially a better price. Okay, moving on. Brent, you're up.
Okay, good evening, Your Worship and Council. The report I have before you is the May Emergency Activity Report for Malahide Fire Service. May was also another down month from what we normally trend, based obviously on the reduction everyone's seeing in the numbers of calls. And I think all the information is contained within the report, and I would be happy to answer any questions if council has any.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Questions for Brent? Dominic?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was actually just a suggestion to what I discussed with the chief earlier, but just for the record, just a small thing about the safety message on the electronic sign. My recommendation is that we skip the part of the statement that says, this is your monthly safety fire message, and just actually go with the message, because you would save a lot of space, and I can speak certainly for the sign on Imperial. It's not easy to read at all at the size of the font that it is. So we shorten it and just deliver the message. I'm hoping it could be much bigger and actually readable.
Yes, and through you, Your Worship, I do agree with the Deputy Mayor, and I've already sent a email off to Chris Cox. He's the person that changes it every month. We provide him with our annual monthly message. So Chris is the one that puts it on the signs at Malahide Community Place, at the Fire Hall, and at South Dorchester Lions Hall as well. And I would agree. I thought the same thing, that there's so many lines of information, you're well past it before you can read it all. So I asked Chris to eliminate that particular part, and I will do my best to be less wordy in the messaging.
I was thinking, when I get a letter, it doesn't say on the letter, this is a letter. It's just a letter. So yeah, there's an
Good
opportunity.
point.
Any other questions for Brent? Seeing none, mover and seconder report number F20-07 entitled Emergency Services Activity Report may be received.
Move.
Moved by Glinski, second by Moore, all in favor.
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, you're doing the next one?
That's correct. Yes, so this report before you relates to withdrawing the drainage petition, which was submitted as part of the site plan condition for the Gunther Trucking site on Imperial Road. The original petition was put forward in order to move a portion of the Laidlaw drain, branch C, as the location was thought to be located under the proposed parking area of the on the Gunther Trucking site. During construction, it was found that the actual location of the drain was just east of the parking area and is no longer required to be relocated. So staff's recommending the council accept the recommendation not to proceed, which has been endorsed by the engineer.
Okay, well, it's lucky for him.
Yes.
Questions for Matt on this one? Seeing none. Mover and second report number PS 20-32 entitled Request to Withdraw Petition, Laidlaw Drain be received. That notice of engineer's recommendation not to proceed with the drainage work at 11766 Imperial Road, property owned by 1841591 Ontario Inc. John and Susanna Gunther, Gunther Trucking be received. The request to withdraw petition be approved.
Move it.
Moved by Widner, seconder, second by Serta, all in favor.
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manal,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. Matt, are you doing the next one or is Talia?
Yes, I'll be doing this one.
Okay, go ahead.
So this report relates to the 2020 revision to the Waste Management Master Plan. So the township's Waste Management Master Plan Revision Committee included members of council and staff, which we've updated the original 2011 Master Plan in preparation to issue a request for proposal for waste collection services this year, as the current waste collection contract expires in 2021. The new master plan encompasses a 5-year planning window, taking into account the current ministry regulations regarding waste management, forthcoming regulatory changes, public input, and the relevant strategies to implement the recommendations as noted in the report in front of you. So as just a quick summary, the focus of the master plan is to serve as a guiding document for all aspects of municipal decision-making regarding waste management. So this revision's focus is on the reduction of the amount of waste under municipal control that's being directed to landfill, and to increase the amount of waste diverted, and also ensure there are sufficient cost-effective programs available to manage waste collection, disposal, and diversion. So as council is aware, the province has set a waste diversion target of 50% by the year 2030. At the township's current 29% diversion rate, the master plan recommendation is to set a waste diversion target of 40% by year 2025 in order to attempt to meet the provincial requirement by 2030. It's also recommended that the existing levels of service for waste management programs remain the same, and the focus of any changes to the funding model will be on collection and disposal of garbage. Accordingly, it's further recommended by the master plan that it be included in the garbage collection request for proposal that provisional option of bi-weekly winter garbage collection with weekly recycling collection be included in that RFP, all in an effort to meet that 40% diversion target that was mentioned. So additionally, further to the master plan revision, current regulations outline framework for the independent producer responsibility. which requires the producers of products and packaging to meet mandatory targets for collection and recycling of their products and packaging. The objective of that regulation being that the transition of the Blue Box program away from municipal taxpayers, as the producers are in the best position to actually reduce waste. So those producers have a choice in how they meet the requirements, which can include directly operating recycling services or contracting with producer responsibility organizations to help meet those requirements, which include municipalities. So the ramp up regarding this model is still in the process with the ministry. However, AMO has requested that municipal governments across the province that deliver curbside recycling programs pass resolutions indicating the desired date to transition to this new full producer program. The dates will be used to map out an ideal transition timeline with Stewardship Ontario, with the goal being to transition up to 1/3 of Blue Box programs each year between 2023 and 2025. So staff believe that an early transition is preferred based on the reality that for every month that passes after January 1st, 2023, under the current system, that represents an unnecessary cost to property taxpayers. So accordingly, we recommend that the MECP and AMO be notified of the township's desired transition to full producer responsibility on January 1st, 2023, which is consistent with the recommendations provided by our neighbors. So bringing that together, the Waste Management Master Plan does encompass a 5-year planning window, as mentioned. So it's further recommended that the next master plan revision be set for 2025 when the municipality transitions to full producer, or when the municipality transitions to full producer responsibility as legislated. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Matt. It was rather interesting on the survey that it was overwhelmingly the majority of the people that responded were very satisfied with the service provided at the present time.
That's right.
So questions for Matt? Go ahead, Jess.
Mayor Manel, if we go to bi-weekly pickup of garbage, how much savings are we looking at for the ratepayers, if any?
Matt?
So through you, your worship, that would, as we're getting a new, putting together a new request for proposal, that would be based on the prices that would be submitted by a new contractor. So I wouldn't have that figure on hand, but the intent would be to put that option in the request for proposal, so it wouldn't necessarily go ahead with that model. We would target more education based models first to try to get that diversion rate higher, but then we would ask for pricing from garbage collection contractors to reduce that pickup in the wintertime. So I don't know the exact cost yet, but that would be based on the proposal.
And certainly, just that would be a council decision once we get the tenders back, whether we accept bi-weekly or not.
That's good, because I would have time supporting it.
Okay. Any other questions? Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you're to Matt. I guess, Matt, I read in 2022 we'd be losing our funding or our money that we're receiving for the recyclables. Is that true?
So through you, your worship, that's part of the wind up program with Stewardship Ontario. So it's that's why we're picking the earlier date, the better, for this transition of full producer responsibility, to put that back on the producers because of those funding issues as well.
But they may help us with the costing of the garbage pickup. We don't know that, or is that an unknown?
That's the exact figures is unknown. It's the framework is still being worked out with the MECP. So it's the consensus across the province really has been the earlier the better to be putting these things together.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. More of a comment than a question. I just wanted to thank staff, and I appreciated the process and the fact that we had a committee set up that enabled more in-depth discussions and really taking the time to weighing the pros and cons of various models, various pricing models, various pickup models. And it wasn't onerous. We only met a few times. It allowed for public consultation to be integrated. And so I think it was a very effective and efficient process. And so thank you for that. And I'll just say that the target will continue to be very difficult to achieve. I think that's why we missed the target in the previous years, because it's not easy. And but I certainly look forward to, you know, getting creative in terms of education and engaging the community in trying to reach those targets.
Okay, thank you, Dominique. Any other questions or comments?
I have one comment.
Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you. We've been at 29% for quite some time. And if the goal is to move up to your 50%, I just hope we don't try to do it by cutting bag tags again, because we all know what happens there. I don't know how we're going to educate these people. But that's where it's got to lay. And I don't know what to do, but I don't see a cut in the bag tags any more than we already have.
No, I don't think that's the issue, Rick. And certainly the ones that have a higher recycling rate than we do are recycling wet garbage, which we do not. And largely because we're a rural municipality, most people have a composter in their backyard and they don't require the wet garbage pickup. But that's why some municipalities are higher than we are.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, mover and second report number PS 20-33 entitled Waste Management Master Plan 2020 Revision be received.
I'll move.
Moved by Jagger, seconder.
I'll second.
Second by Serna, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel.
Yes. Thank you. Arun, you're doing the next one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Today I have a short report in front of you. We are proposing that the township apply for a grant opportunity come available through the FCM. If council will recall, we had done this in the past and we were successful in receiving the grant of $50,000, which allowed us to retain Watson and Associates to complete our asset management plan, which was presented to council early last year. And we are now proposing to seek out the same opportunity to keep that plan moving forward, and by means of a software purchase, and also use some of the funds for the road need study, which is in our budget at this time, but it would be greatly helpful if we could get the grant funding to offset those costs. If the application requires a resolution from council, hence we brought this forward right away to for council consideration. Any questions? I'm open to answer.
Okay, thank you, Arun. Questions for Arun on the grant application? Seeing none, mover and seconder report number FIN 20-11 entitled FCM Municipal Asset Management Program Grant Application be received.
Move.
Moved by Moore, seconder.
Second it.
By Lewis, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel.
Yes,
Carried.
thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, you're doing the next one?
Yes, Your Worship, through you. I have one report for council's consideration, and it's a follow-up to the delegation that we had earlier in the meeting with respect to the review of the Aylmer Police Services and the costing that they presented for the Township of Malahide. So I won't go through the background, and the consultants did a very good job of reviewing, summarizing the information in the report, but basically, the consultants have indicated that there appears to be value added opportunity and are suggesting that the costing is definitely feasible and that the Aylmer Police Service is capable to be able to provide policing to the township that would meet or exceed the adequacy standards. Up in the process, if council wishes to proceed, is to whether or not it wishes to actually terminate its current agreement with the OPP and move forward with negotiating a formal contract with the town of Aylmer. If council does wish to proceed with commencing negotiations, then direction should be provided with regard to who should be involved in those negotiations. The staff are definitely prepared to proceed on council's behalf, and that would be in consultation with ministry staff as well as our township solicitor. I had mentioned in my report, and I need to clarify the one paragraph, the current police services agreement with the OPP expires next June 30th, and I indicated in my report that in order to terminate the agreement, you would require a minimum of 1 year's notice in writing. We would need to provide our intention to terminate. That does not mean that we need to make a decision by June 30th of this year, so I apologize. That section of the report wasn't very clear, and we're able to provide that 1 year's notice at any point in time during the course of the term of the contract. And the contract itself is a 5-year contract that will automatically roll over, so that come June 30th, 2021, it's not a situation where we'll be without OPP policing unless, of course, we decided that's what we wanted and provided the 12 months notice. So the contract continues until such time as we indicate we don't wish it to continue and provide that notice in writing. So with respect to undertaking negotiations, if the council is interested in that, those negotiations could take place in advance, and I would suggest to council that would be the most appropriate way to handle it, is to actually negotiate all of the terms of any type of contract with the town of Aylmer in advance to providing any notice to the OPP if that was what you were going to do. You don't want to be in a situation where you decided this is something we think we want to do and move forward with Aylmer, provide notice to the OPP, and then not be successful in actually negotiating appropriate terms with the town of Aylmer. So the process, if council wishes, would be to move forward with negotiations. If you were able to successfully complete those negotiations, then provide the OPP with notice. That would be 1 year notice, and that would also give the Aylmer Police Service an opportunity to be able to do any recruiting that they needed, get any equipment in place, set any necessary policies, procedures, establish any of the communications services and those types of things. So there's lots of opportunity to be able to get everything running. It would be a seamless transition when that was going to take place. As I indicated, there would be a formal agreement to be negotiated, and there are a couple of recent examples of municipalities that have undertaken negotiations of these types of contracts. So we do have some basis to be able to, a starting template essentially. However, given the current COVID situation, it may take a little bit longer to complete those negotiations just because some in-person meetings and even the consultants had indicated at one point, visiting the different facilities and those types of things aren't going to be able to take place. And we do have a number of other competing priorities right now, and staff and resources. So I would suggest to you that it would take a few months to be able to undertake those negotiations, but certainly we would undertake them as quickly as possible. There are some financial implications that have been outlined in the staff report. At the end of the day, staff would suggest to council that there would likely be significant savings over the life of a 10-year contract if you were to switch to the Aylmer Police Service. But of course, that's based on a number of assumptions, and many of those assumptions aren't definite. They are assumptions, and we can't confirm that any of them will be consistent over the life of the contract. So I know I have had some discussions already with the deputy mayor, and I know that one aspect that wasn't addressed in the staff's report was whether or not there should be any public input or consultation prior to moving forward with any type of negotiations, if that's council's desire. Staff haven't provided you with any specific recommendation with respect to that, or even whether or not you should or shouldn't move to negotiations. This truly is a political decision, and one that it will be council's desire. Staff weren't going to move forward with very much more dialogue between the town of Aylmer until we understood whether or not this was something that was a proposal that council wanted to entertain further, and move to the next level. I'm pleased to answer any questions that council might have, and Todd has come back up on our screen now, and he will be able to assist in if there are questions, consultant report as well.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. And as far as dealing with the public, I think it's only appropriate that we negotiate a contract, because until we've got a contract, there's nothing to tell the public, because everything is sort of up in the air. So until that happens, I don't think I think it's premature to go to the general public on changing services from the OPP to Aylmer Police Orders. Open to questions, Michelle.
Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you.
Go ahead.
It's not a question, Michelle, but there were a lot of assumptions in the presentation for the OPP, and Michelle just said herself that there are assumptions when it comes to negotiating a contract. Well, should we not step back for a minute, take our time, and look and see what these assumptions are all about? Like, let's face it, this has been going on since 2017. I get a report on Tuesday from the consultants and the Aylmer Police Services Board. And on Thursday night, I'm supposed to make a decision. And all I keep hearing is, oh, we got to assume this, we got to assume that. Let's find out exactly what's going on. It's taken 3 years to get to this point. It shouldn't have to be solved in 2 days. And let's take our time and do it right. That's all I can say.
No, the next process for it is not to decide whether we're going that direction or not. The next process is to iron out those assumptions to make sure we know exactly what we're getting.
That's what I said. So iron out the assumptions first, then go to negotiate. But you can't negotiate assuming this, that, and the next thing.
Well, that's part of the negotiation. Once you get negotiated, then you eliminate your assumptions. You know it's in black and white. Questions for Michelle?
Yeah.
Mark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go
We
ahead,
have had quite a few members of the public approach me with their thoughts on this. A lot of them would like information. They would like probably to have a meeting like we had with the amalgamation. And they don't really want the Aylmer Police to do it, and I don't know why, so I would love to hear their reasoning. But I know with the COVID thing, it's really hard to have a public meeting, so I don't know if there's any other avenues you can use, like internet things or whatever, but I am hearing it, and I just don't know why, so I think the public deserve their right to vent or to say what they want me to do, so it's my opinion. Thank you.
Jess?
Mayor Manel, I need more time to absorb what has been presented. And from what I've heard so far, there isn't going to be much saving, any. Matter of fact, I can't see it being any saving at all, because the price of the vegetables is going to depend on who they hire. If they hire people with experience, they're going to have to pay a lot more. And then all of a sudden, we're looking at a lot more than the 3%. And I don't think Aylmer is going to be too much of a hurry to pick up the cost of the extra constables over the basic salary that I believe that they're looking at providing for us. So I would not be supporting this. I would like to defer this until we can have a public, just see exactly what the public has to say and what they think about this. They're the ones that are going to be paying for it, so they should have a say.
Michelle?
Through you, your worship, Councillor Whitner is definitely correct. The COVID situation makes it much more difficult to have what it would be considered our traditional public meeting, and certainly something similar that we dealt with last fall with the amalgamation discussions. It doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity to be able to seek input from the public. We just have to be a little more creative in doing so. And look at some more technological opportunities. I know even with the Waste Management Master Plan, we weren't necessarily in the COVID situation, but we didn't have a public meeting, but we did send out some surveys. We did have some direct questions. We had opportunities to submit their comments online. All of this information that we have received from the Aylmer Police Service in the sense of the costing is all public and has all been presented at, a meeting of Aylmer as well as us previously, has been included in all of our agenda packages. The consultant's report as well. So the information is able to be distributed, and individuals that are interested certainly would have an opportunity to review that information. We could look at potentially having some type of a virtual webinar where we could provide additional information to the public, allow some people to ask questions. It's all dependent, however, on technology. And I know that isn't always the easiest for some of our residents as well, but those avenues do exist. If council wishes to proceed, I'm somewhat reluctant to give you any type of time frame in the sense of when I think we might be able to resume our traditional public consultation and public meetings. Gatherings of any large numbers are still a long way off. So however, that doesn't mean that council can't defer this until such time as that takes place. I would suggest to you it's probably a number of months away. So there are some opportunities, although not as significant or as great as what we've done traditionally. It would really be council's desire as to how you want to proceed.
Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question, could staff clarify what happens, and sorry if I missed it, but what happens at the end of 5 years? So at the end of the contract, if we have made any decisions one way or another, what happens?
It just rolls over. So the OPP will exist. There'll be a new contract that'll be entered into by all of the Elgin group, and those terms will be negotiated along the way. But essentially there really hasn't been many changes to the terms over the last, probably 10 or 15 years. So it really just rolls over, but they're only for a 5-year term.
So I think the report alluded to other municipalities perhaps considering leaving the OPP. And I wanted to clarify something I came across, I think in the 2015 report from the Elgin Group board, when the proposal was being made that to continue and establish a new contract with the OPP, that the fact that 6 municipalities were part of the group created a critical mass, which had an impact on the contract and the feasibility of the contract or the rates that were being offered. So are we not having to also consider that us leaving could have an impact on other municipalities, or whether if other municipalities decide to leave, the impact that it has on us? Like, to what extent do we also have to coordinate?
There would be, through you, your worship, there would be an impact potentially to some of the other municipalities. I can't say the degree of that. The preliminary information that I've received from a couple of individuals suggests that it wouldn't be significant, but that it may adjust their staffing complement, or even, for example, BAM would end up being somewhat orphaned to the east, the only municipality that would be serviced by that. And it might be that there would be a change in detachment areas. It might be that they would decide to, and this is all just general discussion, certainly there's been no decisions made, but it might be that they would be serviced from the Tilsonburg detachment rather than the Elgin one. So there are opportunities to be able to look at that Elgin group. The information we received to date is that it likely won't be substantial, the impact to the others, although they anticipate there would be some impact.
Okay.
But what I would suggest to you through your worship is that what this council needs to decide is what's important for Malahide residents, and make the best decision based on our needs and wants. And while we are cognizant that it may affect our neighbors, we still need to make a decision that's best for our situation.
We have to be considerate of our neighbors, I think. But so all I would say is that based on this discussion, to me, there are a number of additional questions that I think council has. I think the community has additional questions. I think we have questions for the OPP as well as questions to Aylmer, which is why I think perhaps similar to what Councillor Cerna was saying, I sort of envision a pre-negotiation phase where first off, we need to collect what are all the concerns and the questions that we have, including things like the impact on other municipalities, and gather all that information, produce another report to council that then says, okay, so now that we've clarified a number of issues and we've collected all the questions and answered most of them, now do we want to enter into a negotiation? So earlier I alluded to the effectiveness of the Waste Management Committee, how I didn't think it was onerous, neither on staff or council, nor did it really extend the time. So I think it's a good model that we should consider for this. It allowed the few meetings that we had allowed for debate and for gathering of all the pros and cons of various scenarios. So that would be my recommendation tonight, would be to set a committee and follow some of the process as a waste management plan.
So Michelle, the question to you is, these gray areas, are they part of the negotiation, or are they outside of negotiation?
Through your worship, I think some of the questions that some members have asked this evening is information that we can go back to either the OPP or the Aylmer Police Service and get some additional information on. It would have taken, if we were going to move forward with negotiations, it would have happened at that point, but I think we can do so in advance. One of the reasons why staff have not, or the consultants for that matter, have not gone down that road is because, quite frankly, we needed to know whether or not council had an appetite to investigate this potential solution even further than it already is. And so we didn't want to invest a whole lot more time and effort and resources into something if it was decided right off the bat that council wasn't interested in moving forward any further. So now that you've indicated that you're interested in learning more about it, we absolutely can do that. And that would be the next step, and we can gather some more information. If there are specific questions or concerns or issues that specific members of council have, the sooner you could forward them to staff, that would be best. And that way then we can start to gather the information that's necessary. And then if council also wishes to establish a small working group, a subcommittee, similar to that of the Waste Management Master Plan, staff don't have any objection with that either. And then we can use that small group to be able to vet some of the discussions and debate as the Deputy Mayor has indicated, and then come back with a similar final report, or an opportunity to get some more details, even possibly to present to the public before we went ahead and did any formal negotiation process.
Okay, I'm getting consensus that we defer this motion and we have a subcommittee, and that staff go back to Aylmer in regard to some of the gray areas that we need to have ironed out. So I'm getting consensus on that one. So moving seconder to defer. Moved by Moore, seconder Widner, all in favor.
You're muted, Diana, there.
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes.
carried.
Your worship, if I may, one more point. If you council
Thank you.
wishes to advance the situation or expedite it, I guess. If council wanted to this evening, if you already had an idea for individuals that were specifically interested in possibly participating on a small working group, we could determine that now, and then we could begin to set up some meetings and have some discussions and start to pull the information together. It's not necessary this evening, but it's up to council whether or not you want to do that.
I think we can expedite this, and what do we have, 3 members of council on the waste management?
That's correct.
So volunteers, was that including me or no? That was,
It was yourself, the deputy mayor, 1 member of council, and 1 alternate member of council, I believe.
okay. So volunteers, Dominique, myself,
Sure.
Mark,
I'll be the al-
and an alternate,
Okay.
and Rick is alternate.
That's the same as.
Okay, do we need a motion for that?
We can just take that as staff
Do we
direction.
need a motion for that, Michelle?
Staff
Staff
direction.
direction, okay, so we'll have a meeting at, okay. Okay, Long Point, meetings of outside boards. Any questions on the Long Point from January 8th to May 6th? Seeing none, motion to receive and file.
I'll move it.
Second it.
Moved by Serna. Seconded by Galinsky. All in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes.
carried.
Thank you. Correspondence, we have 11 items on correspondence. Anyone wish to make comment or support? No burning issues, so need a motion to receive and file 1 through 11, please. Mover and seconder. Widner, seconder, Galinsky, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes.
carried.
Thank you. Other business correspondence, we received a letter from Ian Johnson and Bert Brower. Michelle, do you want to address that one?
Your worship, if Jean is available, I would actually suggest that he speak to this one. I know that he and Mr. Johnson have spoken about this particular matter in the past, and he might be better to enlighten council.
Gene, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, good evening, Your Worship and Council. Yeah, this letter and request from Mr. Johnson and Mr. Brower, they're just requesting that they be some nicer natural Carolinian type trees planted in some of our existing parks to either enhance some of the landscaping that currently exists or to replace some trees that over the years have been taken down or are not in very good shape. So I have no issues with this. I think it's a good idea and probably something that we could accommodate, but I'm not sure what the cost would be or the exact details. So my suggestion to council would be if they're in favor of the principle of it, that they defer it back to staff. I could then meet with Mr. Johnson and Mr. Brower and come back through budget deliberations with a bit more of a detailed plan with some costing, and then council can make a decision at that point whether it's something they would support, all of it or parts of it, or we could stage some of the planting, or however you chose to do it at that time, if that's acceptable.
Okay, thanks, Gene. And I must comment that both Ian and Bert have planted a number of trees, native trees, throughout Port Bruce and have maintained them for a number of years. So they're really adamant on bringing the Carolinian forestry back to Southern Ontario. And I really applaud them for their efforts. So questions of Gene?
Not a,
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah. Not a question, Mr. Mayor, but just a comment. I don't know Mr. Johnson that well, but obviously everybody knows Bert's my neighbor. And he's planting trees over his farm and everything else. He's giving back. He's doing a great job. As a matter of fact, I told him when he dies, instead of donating some money somewhere, I'm going to plant a tree in his memory. I think that's the best way to serve him. So I think they are doing a good job, and I support this in an instant.
Okay. All right. So I need a mover and seconder. The correspondence received from Ian Johnson and Bert Brower dated June 15, 2020, relating to the trees and public spaces in Port Bruce be referred to municipal staff for further review and consideration. Moved by Serna, second by Moore. All in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes.
carried.
Thank you. Anything else under other business?
I have one question.
Go ahead, Rick.
What happened to our community safety zone? I thought that was coming up at this meeting, and I haven't heard anything about it.
Matt, are you there?
Your worship, I can speak to that one. There is a requirement to pass the bylaws, as I had mentioned at the last council meeting, and staff are working on preparing the necessary bylaws. They haven't been completed yet, and they will be coming forward at your next council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else under other business? See none. Bylaws, mover and seconder bylaw 20-29, being a bylaw to provide for drainage works on the Taylor Drain Branch D. We read a third time, finally passed and property signed and sealed. Linsky. Oh, go ahead, Jess. Go ahead, Jeff.
My question is, why are we looking at borrowing 26,000 plus when we have we've accepted a tender for 9,000 plus, 9,003 something, I believe. So why are we looking at 26,000 to be borrowed?
Matt?
Through you, your worship, that's correct. That it would be typical to that $26,000 is in the amount of the estimate of the works. We've accepted the tender. That this is just an assurance for any extra works or the tendered amount may not reach that full tendered amount during construction, or there could be extras. So typically we would just borrow the full amount of the engineer's estimate for that assurance that the contractor does get paid for the work that they do, and not necessarily utilize all of that money.
At one point, does it get turned back to the people that are in the drain?
Sorry, you broke up there a little bit.
At what point does it get allotted back to the people that are tendering for that are requesting the drain?
At the end of the project, those people are assessed based on the total amount of the work.
So they will be reassessed, not what is on their assessment right now.
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions? Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move.
Moved by Serna, seconder. Seconder, please. Lewis, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. And another bylaw, number 20-30, being a bylaw to provide for drainage work on the Hansville Drain Extension 2020, be read a third time, finally passed, properly signed and sealed. Mover and seconder, please.
Move it.
So moved by Lewis, seconder.
I'll second it.
Linsky. All in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Mayor Manel,
Yes,
carried.
thank you. Bylaw number 20-45, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a joint cost-sharing agreement with the County of Elgin, Municipality of Bayham, Municipality of Dutton Dunwich, Township of Southold, Township of Malahide, Municipality of West Elgin for a joint fire training officer, be given the first, second, third reading and properly signed and sealed.
I'll
Mover
move.
and moved by Jaguar, seconder. Widner, all in favor?
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
I have a question, Mayor Manel.
Go ahead, Jess.
I read that through and I was just wondering what benefit do we as Malahide receive from having that training officer, since it didn't appear that he would be doing anything.
Brent,
Misrepresent something?
Brent can answer that question. Brent?
I believe the intent, sorry, I'll start the video. I believe the intent was to put together a county training officer so that the training across the county would be the same, that all departments would be similar. I agree that we won't have much use for it in that we have a chief training officer and so forth, but there is also a possibility that we could potentially run a course and the others from the other parts of the county would partake in a course that we were administering. So it's more of a, I guess, the idea is to bring one training officer together that will look at the needs of all and try to determine what courses may or may not need to be run.
Are we not doing that already at this time by having departments from other municipalities either inputting or partaking of whatever producing?
Yes, we do. We do have a partnership with some Middlesex departments actually currently that we run our recruit training for all of our new recruits, and the same for officer and instructor courses.
Well, basically, there really isn't an awful lot that he's going to do for us except try to coordinate.
And I believe that was the intention, is the coordination, and that we would only pay beyond obviously what the split is right now, but we would only pay additional costs if in fact we were to utilize them to drive training for us.
Does he have the authority to actually teach some of the courses, or just to be a resource?
I believe the intent is that he is just a resource. I honestly cannot speak to what his qualifications, what he can teach. Within the Ontario Fire Service, if you are going to teach, you have to be certified in the course in which you're teaching, and you also need to be a certified instructor, a fire service instructor, to be able to do the courses. So I don't know what the training officer's qualifications are as far as what he could in fact teach or not teach. But I believe truly the intent is for him to organize the needs of the remaining municipalities in the county and look for which members may or may not be able to run those courses jointly for the remainder, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And just to add to that, Jess, the intent of this is to have a uniform level of training across the county. So no matter if you're from West Elgin or Dutton or Bayham, that if you have a mutual aid call, everyone is trained at the same level. So that is sort of the focus on this one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Further
Any other
question?
questions?
Further
Go ahead,
question. Is there not a couple municipalities that have opted out of this program already?
Well, they have not decided to use him, but they're paying for him.
Right. So they're not going to use them, but and everybody, whether you're opt in or opt out, you have to pay.
Yeah,
But
everybody in the county is paying, but it's up to your discretion whether you want to use him as an overall supervisor or training officer.
well, everybody
So
should use it. Everybody should use it.
Elmer and Central Ogden has decided not to use him at this time,
Okay.
but there's more issues to it than training officer. There's some personalities involved.
Okay. We'll leave it at that.
Mark?
Yeah, just a question. Overall, what is our costing going to be? Just a percentage of what we use, or there's a flat rate? Or
Michelle, any
Yeah,
thoughts?
through your worship, it will be right now, his wage is been included in our portion of the county levy. So there isn't any additional fees to the township to have him be hired as a fire training officer other than through the county levy. And the only additional fees, as the chief mentioned, was if we send individuals to an organized training event. So let's say there's a rope rescue training day and it costs everyone $100 to have a participant go. So if we sent some of our firefighters that needed to be trained in that particular aspect, we would pay, if we sent 3 offers, we would pay $300 in order to be able to cover our costs of running that particular training event. Those are the only additional add-ons. So if it turns out that we don't require training for rope rescue, but a rope rescue training event is happening at that particular day, we wouldn't be charged any particular fee at all. It's only when we attend a specific training event that has been organized and coordinated. There might be other departments that require that particular training. So the coordinator is going to look at opportunities to be able to organize events for multiple departments to be able to save costs. It's cheaper to be able to do it when more people are able to participate. But the only time we're going to be charged extra is if we actually send some of our firefighters to those training events. And it will be dependent on which events they hold and when, and whether it works for our firefighters or not.
thank you.
Okay.
Now,
Yes, go ahead, Chip.
we have a tower. So if we have a session where firefighters from other districts come in for the training, they have to pay for the training through the fire resource person. Who gets the money? Do we get it, or do we get the money?
I think we get it, but I'll have Brent answer that question. Brent?
My belief is if we were to run the course, we would be looking at what it costs us to run the course. And we would be, obviously, if the county were responsible for putting other firefighters other than Malahide firefighters in one of our courses, they would in turn be paying what we establish as the cost per student to run those courses. And you are correct. If it's a rope course, we certainly would be the ones likely running it within the county.
Okay. Any other questions? Diana, did we get a mover and seconder on this?
Yes, we did.
Okay, all in favor?
Councillor Widner,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Cerna,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Galinsky,
A reluctant yes.
Deputy Mayor Jaguar,
Yes.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Mover and seconder bylaw number 20-42, being a confirmatory bylaw, being the first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed. Mover, moved by Moore, seconder.
Second.
Second by Lewis, all in favor.
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky, Deputy Mayor Jager,
Yes.
Mayor Manel.
Yes.
Carried.
Nothing for closed, Michelle?
No, your worship, nothing this evening.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn? Seeing none, mover and seconder, council adjourn its meeting at 8:55 to meet again on July 9th at 7:30. Mover and seconder, Galinsky and Widner, all in favor.
Counselor Widner,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Cerna,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Galinsky,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Jager,
Yes.
Mayor Manel.
Yes.
Carried.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and stay healthy and stay cool. Good night, all.
Good night.
Night, everybody.
Night, night.